Hi, John. It's Kamika. I'm at work though.
I see you today, Kamika. You've got your actual name in the thing and not just a phone number. So that's always,
Oh, okay, cool.
upgrade. I'm excited for you and Barb and Rhonda. I think that that's going to be really awesome talking with the Labor Notes folks.
I'm excited too. Terrified, but excited.
Sarah's pretty chill. I don't think there's too much to be too worried about. She's not going to rake you over the coals or anything.
Okay.
She's definitely not going to make you look bad. She's not going to, you're going to feel totally comfortable with her, and she's going to put you in a good light.
Yeah, the Sarah wrote the article that had Eric and some of the other Sutter nurses that connected us in the first place. So he's definitely a good person to be like speaking to.
Thank you for the reassuring words.
As folks are entering into the chat or into the call, we just ask that you type in into the chat where you're coming from, what facility you are, maybe what unit you work in.
So John, Mark is on audio only. Does he show up?
Do we see his number 510-467?
1 second, I'll tell you.
Yes, that's me.
All right, cool.
There we go.
And just so folks are aware, Raina is working tonight, so they won't be able to be on the call, unfortunately. And this is also not the last call that we're going to do. We're planning on doing calls all through the election so that people can get up to dates, updates and information about how to vote. But we just want to make sure that we wanted to get one last one out before people started getting ballots. Has anyone gotten a ballot yet?
Nope. I haven't checked the mail today, so I shouldn't say. Maybe I should check the mail after the Zoom here.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a ballot either. All right, we're getting some people in the call. I'm really excited. If people can put in just your name and the unit you work in, so that we can see, and then just so we know who you are, where you're from.
Welcome, Liz, Betty, Tina.
Hi, Eric.
How are you, Betty? How you feeling?
Oh, I don't think it's going to take me out this time.
There you go.
Oh, God. But all you just run around unmasked, let everyone get up in your face, all the visitors, everybody, and what's the fuck? So you get COVID. Who cares,
I was kind of laugh. I don't know about you guys, John, in Chicago or everybody in Texas, but of course they told everybody now, oh, you don't have to mask. And my wife is a nurse. She tests people. So whenever somebody's exposed, she tests the people near them. Of course, they're like, I don't feel sick. I'm okay. Pretty much everybody that gets COVID, gets a little sick, and then the people around them, there's like a half dozen that are asymptomatic and they're walking around without a mask. It's really kind of,
Mm.
the virus is pretty ingenious.
Beware of a runny nose. You think somebody's got allergies and pollens. That's how I got it. Now I have COVID.
Wow.
I'm sorry to hear that, Betty.
A runny nose. That's it. But go ahead and go to work. Take those masks off, jam the conference rooms off to full capacity. No problem. Yeah. Anyway,
We're pretty fortunate here. We're still masking on the south side of Chicago. So
good.
it's not, I mean, people take their masks down to take sips of water and stuff like that. And it's a little.
Norm, come in.
Oh,
So
Liz, you're not on mute.
I'm gonna turn on the TV. Okay, I'm on Zoom.
All right, Melissa.
Hey,
John, I don't think, you want to put Liz on mute? I don't think she,
Yeah.
you got it? Okay.
I better.
I'm sorry, I'll mute it.
Now, John, Melissa is a Kaiser nurse in Oakland here. She was part of the negotiating team at Alta Bates.
Awesome.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm muted now.
No problem. I like hearing Norman. Put him on later because I'd like to hear his take on things.
He's
Can he
brilliant.
growl on command? Can he growl on command when we talk about CNA management?
Right.
All right, folks, we're coming up on 7:08. And if people would mind just throwing your introductions into the chat, just say who you are, what kind of unit you work in. And then we can do brief introductions and get going once we hit around 7:10. I will say that, what will I say? We're now in, this is we started this campaign about at the end of February when we put in our names in the hat and started organizing, and it feels like we're coming up on a big milestone. So I'm really excited that people keep joining. Welcome, Jasmine from Augusta. I'm very excited that you're here. All of our VA sisters and brothers and siblings, I'm just glad that you all are jumping into this, because I think that you are going to help change the union in a historic way. I'm really excited. All right, folks, it's 7:10. This is our welcome everybody to our second open Zoom call that is open to everybody from who is a rank and file member of the union, California Nurses Association, National Nurse Organizing Committee, or as many people like to call us, National Nurses United. Our last call was on this last Saturday. And basically this is, I'll kind of just set the tone for the call. These are supposed to be open forums for nurses to learn about us, ask us questions, kind of kick the tires, look under the hood. And we're not here to cherry pick questions. We want to hear tough questions, critical questions, because we know that if we couldn't answer your questions in these Zoom calls, then maybe we shouldn't be, there we go. Maybe we shouldn't be running for national leadership in our union. So that being said, how about we introduce, we have 3 of the 4 candidates for the Council of Presidents. And then we've also got a candidate for the only contested board seat, which is Region 15. And I would like to have maybe Rhonda, you can go, and then Mark and then Eric, and then me. And so we'll just introduce ourselves. We'll just say, who we are, why we became a nurse, and then, we'll, brief why is it that we're running for the for our particular office inside the union. So, Rhonda, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you for having me on the call. So each call that I'm on, I get critiqued a little bit by my comrades. So I'm going to take constructive criticism and preface this with, I am not an angry person. I'm passionate. So I have 2 adult children now who used to say when they were little, stop yelling at me, mommy. And I would say, I'm not yelling. I'm just speaking to you passionately. So I'm not yelling and I'm not angry. Okay. So I just want to preface it with that. I have been a registered nurse for 34 years. 29 of that has been in the emergency department. I was in the private sector for 22 years. I've been in the VA for 16 years this week. I have been a member of CNA NNOC since 2006. I started organizing with NNOC Ohio for mandatory nurse-patient ratios in the state, and got involved that way. And then once I went to the VA, they were part of the UAN, and in 2009, NNU was founded, and the VA nurses opted to organize with NNU and leave the UAN. Why am I running? I have watched this union go from, in the 17 years that I've been involved, go from a rank and file activist union to a very management-esque union. And that absolutely culminated at our national VA training in Tampa, Florida, in the beginning of February. And we were presented with a 10-page document that said it was election guidelines, which when we opened that 10-page document and nobody had ever seen until the last 2 hours of the meeting on a Friday afternoon, when we opened that up, we saw that it changes the entire structure of our union. And me knowing CNA and NNOC, I saw that the structure of our union was being structured like CNA and NNOC. So as a federal sector registered nurse, we are a square peg who cannot be beat into a round hole. And it is not one size fits all. And we have very unique issues that need to be addressed. I do not believe that those have been addressed in Region 15, which is all 23 of the VAs that we cover from San Diego to Miami, Florida. I don't think that our issues have been brought to the table. And a lot of the current CNA, NNOC staff and current Council of Presidents don't even understand the everyday things that we face in the VA system. So I ran to be a voice at that table, and I am here to make sure that the VA RN's voices are heard, and that hopefully we return back to a rank and file activist organization that we once enjoyed. I'm also not running on a slate, just so everyone knows. I'm the only independent candidate there is. So I'm running on my own accord, and all of the experience that I have in nursing at large, but as a VA nurse for the past 16 years. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But I'm going to try to be quiet during this whole call. We'll see how that works.
We will see how that goes. Just a reminder to folks before we jump into the next introduction, if you're new into the call, if you could add in your name and what unit you work in the chat, just so we can see who all's in here. All right, Mark, why don't you give us a little introduction to everybody?
Is my mic on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. Hello, my name is Mark Goodick. I've been a nurse for 19 years. I was Canadian born, but have become an American citizen in the last 6 months. I came to Al Debates right out of nursing school from Canada. And at that time, I thought, oh, I'm working for a nonprofit agency, being the Sutter Health System. And oh, they must be doing good things for our community. And then over time realized, no, that's not exactly what's happening here, and was very disillusioned. I work closely with Eric. He works in the ITC, the unit next door to me. So I've known him for a number of years, and I've tried to be very supportive for him during our negotiations and past strikes. We did the 9, almost 10 strikes in the past, and then the recent 2 that we did. And I would always get my information from him about what was happening at the bargaining table. And then the more and more I heard about the deceit and the lack of representation, and just the we hear you, but nothing really being done. It seemed I again became very disillusioned and felt that these people do not have our best interests at heart. And when we finally achieved some kind of lateral communications, met up with John and other people on the other side of the country, and found out the same things were happening to them, and had to devise an on-the-fly game plan. And not running was not an option, in my opinion. So I threw my hat in and said, if no other person says yes and you need a fourth, then I'll be that person. So I am that person now. And even though I don't have the same expertise in the geopolitical landscape of what's happening, I'm a quick learn, and I will do the best job that I possibly can. And I'm going to listen to nurses. I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And this will be a democracy and a union of rank and file nurses. And as the will of the nurses is the direction the union will go. I'm done.
Perfect. All right. So, Eric, do you want to give yourself an introduction?
My name is Eric Koch. I've been a nurse since I got out of the Navy and after the first Gulf War. So I've been at Alta Bates for since 1991. I've been on the past 3 negotiating teams, going from seeing a very progressive union, as Rhonda reiterated, to being a very top-down management-run union, where nurses seemingly had to beg to get things put into the contract or to be proposed. And one of the reasons I've decided to run with John, and of course Raina, who's not on the call right now, and Mark, is because I think our union, as I mentioned to John earlier, is moribund. We're about to become irrelevant, and we're just going to end up joining the rest of the unions in the country that don't really care about their members. We need to be vibrant, and we need to be listening to nurses. We need to be a nurse-led union again. And I think it's essential for the future of us as nurses and for nurses in a union that we take charge of CNA and NOC. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, cool. So, and then my name is John Hieronymus. I am a PACU recovery nurse at University of Chicago. Before that, I was a medical ICU nurse at University of Chicago for 6.5 years. And then I worked ER at a community hospital at Chicago Southwest Side. And then I was an LPN doing hospice, home hospice, and long-term acute care when I first became a nurse. So I've been at University of Chicago for 12 years now. My involvement with the union, I'm a nurse rep at University of Chicago, and do representational work, as well as help with various political campaigns in terms of advocating for the Illinois Nurse Patient Ratio Act, advocating for Medicare for All, and other various political priorities of the union. And I'm running. When I first thought about moving up above the level of a rep, I was just thinking that all of our local leadership in my hospital is about to retire. And I had no interest in being the person at the front. I thought I'd be a good supporting actor to one of the other nurses at our hospital. And so I went to Labor Notes, which is a labor advocacy event here in Chicago every 2 years. And they also put out a newsletter, and just went through all the different classes it would take to learn about our union rights. And I learned all sorts of things I didn't know about, that staff have legal responsibilities to represent nurses' interests, their financial interests above everything else, that we have the right to free speech inside of our union, that we have, there's certain democratic rights that we have, that our union just did very little to educate my coworkers on, myself and my coworkers on. It kind of was like surprising that I had to go outside the union to find out these things. I've been part of several groups inside of our union at Chicago trying to bring more democracy into our union. And the joke was, you get like, we got a victory. Someone got the bylaws sent to them. But it was like a copy of a copy of a copy. You have to squint real hard to read. And they were 5 or 10 years old. And so, figuring out all the things in terms of like the legal reporting was all very like new to me, even a few years ago. In 2019, we went on strike, and that's when it really became apparent that, first off, like, our ability to strike and be organized was so important, and also how little resources got dedicated by our union to kind of making those things as powerful as it could be. So that kind of set the stage for this past winter. A good friend of mine was a staff member who was initially elected rank and file in their union as an academic worker, then got brought in to staff a local campaign for the graduate student workers at University of Chicago. And I worked with them to build the University of Chicago Labor Council, which is where labor activists across the University of Chicago come together and coordinate actions, including supporting the Chicago Teachers Union strike, May Day, things like that. And then they came into, they got hired and recruited into our union, and they're very excited about that. And then they kind of got fired when they seemed like connecting nurses, talking to each other to just figure out what was going on. We're comparing notes about things like staff. How many staff do we have? Why is it that our hospital has bringing in like $4 million worth of dues and only has 1.5 staffers? Those sorts of things. As soon as nurses started asking questions, they kind of connected the dots and decided Natalie had to go, and they could never give a real reason why that happened. So long story short, we saw what happened with Sutter in Alta Bates through Labor Notes, and then and that was shortly after what happened with us. And then the folks out at Alta Bates were like very agitated over a direction with bargaining that they were not happy with. And so we all got on a phone call and we started talking and comparing notes, and it was all sounded very eerily similar what was going on out in California and in Chicago. And then I'll wrap it up here. It's just the main things that we took away from that is that someone needs to do something. So we all started desperately asking people who could run. And I know lots of nurses who I consider leaders, and none of them felt confident to take up the task of running for union office above their own facility. And according to the bylaws, that's a pretty big failure on the part of our staffers to live up to the rules of the union. Everyone should be being equipped to go into leadership. So we all decided to throw our rings in the hat with the understanding that it was not the perfect representation of all the nurses in the union, but people said, do it, please. And when we started, all of a sudden things started changing for the nurses out in California. And they got a much better contract than they had on offer. And you know, it's been a pretty wild ride ever since. So I'll stop talking because I've been talking too long. We could do a couple of things, I guess. I won't stop talking. If people have questions, they can ask us questions. We can post. We have a basically a platform that we've put together over the month when we were getting ready to run, of things that we thought needed to happen to change to democratize the union. I can post a link to that in the chat. And if people just want to ask us questions or say anything about like the election that's coming up, this is a historic election. It's one of the first challenges to California Nurses Association, National Nurse Organizing Committee's elected leadership in the history of the union. Eric, you got your hand risen up.
Yeah, I just want to say it was great to see all obviously we have the public sector, we have the VA from across the country. And of course we have Lisa from Texas. I don't know how many, if we have anybody from New York on the call. Thanks to Labor Notes, I just have to say that we thought we were at Altibates. We thought we were being cornered by some evil cabal for staff members that were just basically putting us under the thumb because they were just too lazy to do something, that they didn't want to work for us. We actually heard when we had a strike that one of the staff members was saying, don't they know how much money these strikes cost? And it's just kind of funny is because we're actually, as nurses, I think we all know we were never more powerful than we were during the midst of that strike, during that pandemic. If we would have struck in December of 2021, management actually told us as an aside later on, wow, we were worried you were going to strike because basically if you struck, we were going to give you everything you wanted because we had no nurses to replace you with. And we were, of course, filled to capacity. Why did our union not choose to act in our favor? Because our union had already probably, from intimation, had already made a side deal with management over 16 other tables to settle this, to spend as little money as possible so they didn't have to fight for us, so they could use our dues monies for something else. I think you need to know that what happened, thanks to Labor Notes, I was connected with John, Mark was connected with John, Michael, we all got connected together and realized that this is happening across the country, that we are being put in silos by our union. Now, here we are on a Zoom call. And during these multiple Zoom calls, we've had people from so many different states meeting together. This is something our union does not like to happen. And that's why it's essential that it happens more often. John has mentioned last time in a call, I don't know whether we're going to win or not. We're going to put up a hell of a fight. It's a good fight. It's a necessary fight. We want to win, but if we're not, it's just the first battle in a long war to win back the union for we nurses. It's going to be tougher next time. And I think John had talked to that they're going to change the bylaws. And I hope John can put it in the chat again. The evolution of our bylaws going from a very open progressive union to being slowly eroding the rights of nurses to have a say in our union. This is a dangerous trend. And I'm sure after our challenge, which they didn't expect, and that Rhonda standing up and saying, I'm Spartacus, I'm Rhonda, and I'm not going to stand down. These are things they weren't expecting. And I'm sure they're going to make it even tougher for, if we don't win, the next John, Raina, Eric, and Mark challenge will be even harder to summit, to get to the top. So I just think we should relish what we have now. And we have a limited time. Can somebody help me with I'm a little older. I can't remember, about 3 weeks left to vote or 3.5 weeks left to vote.
No, it's
May, actually 5 weeks, close to 5 weeks. May 17th or 16th is the last day for ballots. But I want to tell you, vote early, but don't vote often, just one time. Vote early, because I really don't trust the fact that they may not, I don't want to say there would be any disenfranchisement, but let's just make sure that we get our votes in and have our say. It's very important that we have 3 weeks of just hard work to get over the top, and we can only do it with all of your help. And we're gonna have to do it. I know Liz and Betty and a few of us older folks remember the Breck shampoo commercials. She told 2 people who told 2 people who told 2 people who told 2 people. So we're gonna have to do this by word of mouth, and what little presence we have on social media, we have to make it count. So please, pass on the word, pass on the things we share here to each and every nurse you know. Even if you don't think they'll agree with us, it's important to plant the seed that there is something better and that we deserve something better. So thanks, John.
Yeah, real quick, because we should absolutely mention Raina. Does someone, Mark, do you mind giving a little bit of a intro to Raina, even though they're not here, just so folks know who she is and a little bit of why she's running. And then Mike, I see your hand is up.
Sorry, I'm in a hallway here to get good reception. So Raina, I believe she's been a nurse in California for, I want to say 15 years. And I've known her from working with her directly at Alpha Bates in the critical care unit. And I've always seen Raina trying to put herself forward, be more involved with things. She's on the PPC council, and she's also getting herself put forward more on the unit. She's the skin champion, and she's looking for her staff nurse 3 right now. So she's very active in bettering herself. And then she was getting involved in the union as well, in addition to the PPC council, where on the strike line they were delegating tasks to her, and we needed more people. And I said, hey, Raina, how about instead of taking care of these little menial tasks, how would you like an opportunity to go right to the top and do something, where people are really going to hear you? And she was very hesitant. And I said, if you do it, I'll do it too. So, and I think a lot of her motivation was also for myself and Raina is our mutual gratitude to Eric and Michael Hill and all the people that were on the bargaining team during our last negotiations, how they went over and above, represented us in an exemplar fashion. And we felt that we owed them a debt as well. And that's what Raina has told me. And I'm proud to be running with her and to be her friend.
Awesome. I also want to say, Raina is on, like Mark mentioned, Raina's on PPC, and a big thing that they've been talking about on our calls is just the work of defending nursing practice and making sure that our PPC is like, those are places where things actually happen and aren't just, kind of dead committees. So I just wanted to pass that along to everybody. Mike, you've had your hand up for a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the last day for voting is the 19th, 9 a.m. So we have that. And if you did not get a ballot or you need a duplicate of somewhere, the last day to request that is May 8th. Just so that's everybody in everybody's mind. The request for a duplicate has to be done by email. I was looking for the address here. I'll put it in the chat for that. So if you need a duplicate ballot, but I know you wanted to talk about that before because the last meeting we were talking about that to some extent.
Absolutely. And if people want to see Cynthia, who's on this call, has gotten their first has gotten a ballot. And so you can kind of take a look at how they look. And I think what we probably will do before the end of this call is schedule a ballot fill out live stream so that people can see us filling them out. And how the best, what, you know, what they look like, and then making out the envelopes. We want to say, as soon as you get your ballot, as soon as your coworkers get your ballot, to absolutely get them filling those out and send them in, because the last thing we want to happen is that they, yeah, that's the big thing. What does the envelope look like, or what did the envelope look like, Cynthia? The sooner people fill those in, the better, because the last thing we want to do is have them kind of like disappear into people's junk mail piles. Maybe while we're talking about that, because I know Rhonda had said that they wanted us to talk about the platform, because I know that Rhonda's been using the platform to really good effect. The question they've been asking people is, have you seen the platform of the incumbents? And so far, no one has been able to produce a platform from the incumbents. So I'm going to go into our whiteboard. And I'm just going to show, this is our kind of like too long, don't read action plan for people, so they can kind of see what our main things are. And this will give people just an ability to kind of see our main issues, and then we have some bullet points, but also so people know there's more, there is a more detailed plan that is in our actual platform document that I linked above. I'll repost that here in a moment. But anyway, so our big thing, we really feel across all of our experience that staff needs to be accountable to us. And they work for nurses above all else. And we want to make sure that people, we need to look into how CNA has been running, particularly since the pandemic, because it seems as though the union got off track, and we want to get things back on track. We need to look at the various finances and make sure that everyone can see, like a public audit, so people can see where all of our dues have been going. We've found some really interesting discoveries where sometimes people in elected board have elected to the Council of Presidents have been awarding themselves pretty substantial contracts for union dues to LLCs in their name. We want to find out how that happens. We want to make sure that staff performance is subject to bedside nurses and clinical nurses, so that everyone knows how they're doing, how they stand with the nurses who they're working with and supporting. And then we also want to make sure, this is one of Mark's big proposals, which I think is great, is setting up a bedside clinical nurse committee for drafting a code of ethics for the staff and elected union leadership. So there's no question about how it is that they should be acting. And then we've got our platform on democracy, and we're talking about bottom-up democracy unites and strengthens our union. You know, I know that there are some people who are afraid of like democracy inside of our union. Yeah, that's the defend our union is like, you know, we're, instead of defending our union, it feels like they want to defend status quo. So we want to convene and empower the existing democratically structured forums in the union, including Metro Councils, regional professional practice committee meetings, and nurse rep meetings. We also know that there used to be a lot of regional structures that were struck from the bylaws over the past 20 years. And we want to just revive those and get them back to where they should be, so that nurses in regional areas can have a say over how resources are spent, what kind of staff support they get, that sort of stuff. We want there to be an open union caucus structure. So that means that, you know, shift change right now is a bit of a reform caucus inside the union. We've had to fight tooth and nail to even be heard. We'd like that to be a more open thing. We think that there should be caucuses for young nurses. We think there should be caucuses for Black and brown nurses, for them to express the different things that they think are important inside the union. We also want to organize regional conventions to prep for a constitutional convention for the democratic restructuring of the union, because we believe that we'll have to go through a process where we propose rebuilding how the regional structures work in the union and making that like an official thing, so that everyone can actually participate meaningfully. I'll just go through the rest of this just so we can wrap it up. Transparency, we want dues paying nurses have a right to see how the union works for us. So routine dues expenditure reports should be available to every nurse. We want to publish transcripts for executive council meetings, or like, the council of presidents and the board. We're going to develop a database of collective bargaining agreements in the union and our union's facilities, so that nurses can see what kind of contract they've got at Kaiser, what kind of contract we have at Alta Bates, what kind of contract we have in the VA, those sorts of things. So we can pick out like the really best parts when we're going to our own negotiations. We want to investigate any complaints of direct dealing between union staff and employers. We just need to end the idea that staff would go behind nurses' backs and settle things that are not in our best interest. We want to end the practice of centralizing collective bargaining efforts that are kind of used in ways to kind of push people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. So we want to make sure that we like how we build these really big strikes, but we want to make sure that they're still directed by nurses and not by staffers who aren't nurses. Autonomy is a big deal. RNs are capable professionals, can independently decide our union's tactics and strategy. We think that if dues paying members need to have a member meeting without staff, that should be that should be something that our union doesn't fight. We should acquire union halls and offices and organizing spaces very close to where we work so that we can get to them. And we want to establish online union-wide forum for discussion of union business, so that people can hop in and be like, hey, what's going on over with you all? And we can kind of talk with each other about these sorts of things. And then we also want to break down the silos that staff have kind of built around us to kind of keep us from talking to each other. It should never be a question of what's going on over in your hospital or my hospital where we don't talk to each other. It should be encouraged. Because when people compare notes, that's when I think the best sorts of work in our union happens. And then finally, we just want to reestablish bedside clinical nurse union leadership. So union RNs need all the barriers removed from taking a leading role in our union. The idea that all of the amazing nurses that I've worked with on all these different campaigns didn't feel like they had the knowledge to become leaders in that higher level in the union is really kind of a shame to me. And that needs to, so we need to create a campaign so that people to bring people into leadership who have ideas and want to bring them into, our union shouldn't be afraid of new ideas or new leaders. We need to have a organizing strategy and training program so that nurses know how to organize. Currently, we have some of these things, but they're very focused on just kind of more like indoctrinating people. And then we want to establish and implement a union-wide Know Your Rights education program so that every nurse in our union knows all their union rights and obligations. We feel like that's just been kind of lacking. So that's pretty much it for the main part of the action plan. And I see that we're still at 33 nurses on this call, or 33 people. I'm going to be quiet and let other people talk because that was a lot of stuff. And if anyone has any questions, either put them in the chat or raise your hands and we will call on you. Does anyone have any questions about the stuff that's been going on in the chat in terms of just like the questions about the voting itself or how the elections are going?
So how will this is Leslie, I'm sorry. How will the ballots come? I'm with the VA, so will you all be on the same ballot as the VA ballot?
Yes. Real quick, let me just take a look. So we have the two on the Council of Presidents, and then we're going to look at the delegates. So you will have your own set of delegates that you're voting for, I believe, or for the board. Give me 1 second. Why is this not? Because we're looking. Leslie, just forgive us because we're seeing a ballot for the first time.
Hey, John, this is Rhonda.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so you know, each region will get their own ballot specific to that region for their delegates and for their board of director choices. So the one you're looking at, I believe, said from region 1A. So the VA will get something with both slates of Council of Presidents. Then they will get a ballot. I mean, the same ballot will have my name and Sharda's name on it. And then it'll have all of the delegates listed as well. So it'll look a lot like that first page, but then it'll be filled in with each region's own people. Does that make sense?
Yes. And Rhonda, I have some VA nurses on the line, and it was kind of confusing for them in terms of the office that you were running for. So can you kind of explain that to them, please?
Yes. Is that sure? Is
John,
that okay?
I hope I'm not
Is that all
interrupting.
right, John?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the VA, NNU VA is comprised of 23 VAs from San Diego to Miami, Florida, and all parts in between. So Region 15 delegate board of directors is the person who will represent Region 15, which is all 23 of the VAs on the board of directors in California at meetings. So I will be your voice at the table in California on the CNA NNOC board. Does that make sense? If any of the VA nurses who are on this call don't understand what I'm saying, please speak up.
I also see Maggie's asking just a question about what's the difference between the roles between Council of Presidents versus the ballot committee versus the delegates. So maybe if people want to think about what they want to ask Rhonda in terms of Rhonda's running for a particular board seat, which will help represent you all in your interest on the board. And that actually does have like that position has like some power within the national level organizing, which is really great. The Council of Presidents is 4 seats that basically the way the union is structured currently, because of a series of bylaws changes that started in 2017, is effectively, if you imagine like the president and the vice president, except instead of it being a president and vice president, it's just 4 presidents of the United States. Think of it like that. Okay. And so the Council of Presidents has a lot of control over what we spend our money on as a union. So a big part of our goal is to be like, let's make sure that we take the money that our union has $42 million sitting in a bank account, collecting bank account interest, not like invested, And we, as the Council of Presidents, a big priority is let's build organizing, right? So we want to organize new nurses who are not in the union into the union. And that would take resources, and it would take coming up with a plan and a strategy. And so we would help shape those sorts of things so that it ends up the money to bring nurses in Southern hospitals into the union, or in right to work states into the union. Those sorts of things are decisions that the Council of Presidents makes. Also, like if we wanted to do things like help restructure the union to make it more democratic, the Council of Presidents has a lot of power over calling things like conventions and assemblies and that sort of thing, so that we can get the kind of democratic input to make that a real thing. We also get to decide like what kind of, certain how we relate to staff. And so we would be like, all right, staff, like we're going to have, we're adopting a relational form of, organizing theory about building, relationships across a bargaining unit that's also connected to other hospitals and maybe the same system. And, your job is to help facilitate that now, instead of your job is to keep nurses kind of not talking to each other. So those are things that the Council of President does. And then finally, there was a question about the delegates. So there's the House of Delegates, which is kind of like the Congress of our union. And in many unions, the House of Delegates does things like debates whether or not to take up certain policies. And in a democratic union, the presidents, or in our case, the co-presidents or the Council of Presidents, are in many ways accountable to the House of Delegates. House of Delegates can bring forward their own policy proposals, that sort of thing. And it would be in a normal union, a place where we develop new leadership to take over every 4 to 6 years or so, getting people kind of up and running and ready and familiar with all the different structures of the union at a national level. So does that answer that question, Maggie, about what the roles are?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
And can I just jump in? The board of directors are actually responsible. I mean, they answer to their constituents, right? So what you guys want to bring forward to these meetings in California would be things that we would introduce when we were at those meetings. And then there's debate on the floor for those issues as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, just Melissa, just so you know, we're planning on doing meetings throughout the campaign until we wrap it up. So I'm hoping that we can settle at the end of this call a couple of dates for the next few meetings, because we want as many, just like in this meeting, the last meeting, there were nurses who had never met us or been in a space where we were. And we want to keep encouraging people to meet us so that you guys can take back the good news to your coworkers that, we could do something differently than how we've been doing things. Does anyone else have any other questions or thoughts? I do want to say we're trying to keep it to 90 minutes, and we're about on an hours long for this meeting so far. Does anyone have any questions about the timeline in terms of getting elected? If the election goes through and we are successful, we won't be seated as a Council of Presidents until October in the convention. So in the period between getting elected and actually getting seated, we're probably going to have to keep doing a lot of organizing to be ready for the convention itself and to hit the ground running. I know Eric and I talked about coming up with video trainings where we can talk about things like collective bargaining to people who have never collective bargained before, because our union tends to favor bringing in people who have never been in a collective bargaining situation. So those are things that we want to keep working on. I know Mark and we've been talking about building our forum. I know Brandon was also interested in that, building a forum so we can keep talking about what we need to do, because even if we get elected, there should still be people outside of the elected leadership who are capable of pushing elected leadership to do, for the union to be better and stronger. Eric, you've got your hand raised.
Right. I noticed Liz raised in the chat there. What do we know about the other slate? Well, the other slate is an incumbent slate. I believe there is a new member two new members that are coming on, but they've all, one of them has already been very much involved with the Council of Presidents before, so she's just a returning member, I believe. And the other young lady from Kaiser is Melissa, is she not from Kaiser, Oakland? The young lady running for the Council of Presidents. We don't know a lot about the other slate because unlike them, I mean, we put out a platform. We are telling you what we want to do to change the union. And what they're telling you is, well, what they've told people throughout the country is that, Rhonda, help me out. What were some of the things they said? We want to tear down the union. We're Trump supporters. We're all sorts of things, you know, even though our platform clearly states what we want to do, and that platform's available for anybody to read. Unfortunately, the other slate has just been deciding to go, to destroy us by innuendo and, false information about who we are and what we represent. They're just about continuing the status quo. If you feel that your union's doing well and you want to continue with the status quo, then by all means vote for them. But I'm just saying is I think people need to read our platform, and just that short flyer should tell you we are drastically different than the other slate. So Liz, they haven't made the effort to introduce themselves because I really think they fear introducing themselves, because that would open them to the questions that we're willing to take on. What do we think is wrong with the union? And they have to defend why they think everything's hunky-dory with the union. So, all right, thanks, John.
No problem. I will say that there have been people who have been from the Council of Presidents who've been traveling around to trainings and kind of introducing themselves in those spaces.
Which they've never done before, John, which they've never done before.
Which is a thing that they've never done. I will let Rhonda, who's got their hand up, and then we can maybe ask some of these other questions. So yeah, it's
Melissa then will explain about the Leo.
Yeah, Melissa actually had her hand up first, so let's hear from Melissa.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted, I was responding initially to Eric's question about the Kaiser nurse. I am not sure where she is from. I've been with Kaiser just a year. For those who don't know me and the participants here, I was a Sutter nurse for 12 years. I've been very involved with CNA on the bargaining team. My first contract, I didn't finish it with Altabate Summit, this past contract, and prior to that, I sat on the Sutter Delta bargaining team through 2 contracts. Been very involved with CNA and all of our rallies and all of that, very involved, and just very disappointed during our last contract negotiations, and watching them evolve into just, to me, just this horrible union. And I can't believe that they represent us, but this isn't the representation that we deserve. I'm excited about this campaign. I'm excited to be involved now. I plan to take these, what I've learned, back to my Kaiser nurses. I had texted some before, a few days before, when I received this Zoom link. I will continue to text them. I am going to start making my rounds in the hospital. I'm going to actually give the nurse rep, the chief nurse rep of the facility, a call, and see where she stands or if she's heard about our mission to take back our union, and then, take it from there. And thank you everybody for, being here. We supporting each other. We don't deserve this treatment from our union. Nobody deserves this kind of treatment from any union. They work for us. We are here to take care of our patients in the community. Our patients, our community deserve better treatment. We're treated well. We're able to stand up and treat our patients in the community well. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Rhonda, you've got your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So I've had a lot of people call me and tell me that they're supporting the other slate and that you guys don't have that they don't know where you all stand. And so I asked them if they knew, where the other slate stood, and they're unable to articulate anything the other slate is saying or doing. So, it begs the question, why would they be raising doubt about you guys as a slate, about, your stances on different issues, if they can't even answer that about the current Council of Presidents? So I just kind of throw that back to my colleagues and try to have them, explain that to me when they ask me those questions.
Right. And
Rhonda, tell them to watch our video. It's all laid out right there. Read our material. Have them look at our material. It's laid out
Absolutely.
all right there for them.
Well, and I've got plenty of your stuff, and I've got it posted on all my, social media, and I also have flyers. So, I don't have a problem articulating where you guys stand because, I've attended these calls and I've asked you hard questions and I know where you guys stand. So I don't have any problem articulating that to them.
One other thing I was going to say, well, KM Rivera is asking how the election is run, who's currently in the positions and how the election can change the future. So I can answer some of those questions. So the election is being run by mail-in ballot. You will get, if you are a dues paying member in good standing. So unfortunately, we have people who are involved who don't have their first collective bargaining agreement yet. They can't vote, unfortunately, or their facilities in right to work states or are federally affected by the Janus decisions where, maybe, they're a minority of the nurses are actually dues paying in good standing. So if you are a dues paying member in good standing, you can vote in the election. The election itself, in terms of the ballots, have been distributed and are being collected by an independent contractor. So we expect that at least the ballots themselves are not being they're not going to be stuffing the ballot box in that sense, and that also that the actual count itself, we will have people who are able to watch the count and to verify how the election itself goes. So just be aware that that's generally how the election will work. The election, how can it change the future? Well, if we get elected to the Council of Presidents, because over the last 20 years, there's been a slow eroding of the democratic control of the union by rank and file nurses, and the Council of Presidents has collected and centralized an unusual amount of power within the union. So most unions don't have a small central committee of people who make all of the decisions about political priorities and staffing. Like usually you have locals in your union, and then you get your dues and you decide how much of your dues you send to the national or the international union, and then out of your dues that you keep, you decide who you hire, who you fire, what you want to spend your money on, that sort of stuff. So currently, most of those decisions are made either by this very small 4-person committee of people who have no accountability to any other body of nurses in the union, or the directors who work for them. And so if we get elected, the whole plan is to change that structure so that we have a broad group of nurses at the top of the union who are accountable to rank and file dues paying members. And we believe that once we get that situated, that is going to dramatically change how the union works. So this election's, that's why we talk about it being historic and why it's so important. If it wasn't, and unfortunately, because of the way we have looked at the bylaws changes over the years, they have continually concentrated power more and more away, taken more and more power away from regular nurses inside the union. We anticipate that if we don't change this direction of the union, that we will end up in a situation where things are even less democratic, where maybe the Council of Presidents is elected by the board of directors, or people that like basically taking the vote, one nurse, one vote away from us. That's definitely on the table. So I want to hear people, or I want people to understand those are the things that will change. And Eric kind of gave an outline of who the current people who are running are. We know Kathy Kennedy came to Chicago to introduce themselves, literally walked through Cook County NICU without a visitor's pass, being walked through by a retiring board member. And Koki Giles has been around for a very long time. And then is it Michelle or Sandy who's new to the union, or new to like the upper leadership?
Michelle is new.
Sure. And then and I don't know anything about Sandy, but we do know that these are people who they've been in the union for a very long time, and that basically the direction of the union being less and less democratic is that's their prerogative, right? So when we're talking about like who they are, we should be aware that this is a group of people who are comfortable taking power away from dues paying members and concentrating it into smaller and smaller hand of a group of people. Okay, did that answer that question for you, KM? Also, I saw, KM, you wanted to know if you write in the candidates' names on the ballot, you'll see on the ballot that there is a specific, you'll see the slates. Each you can just check, you either check one or the other. You don't have to, you check the incumbents or you check the shift change folks, which would be Eric, Mark, me, so I'm John, and Raina. If you're if you're not in region 15, and then if you're in region 15 and you want to vote for Rhonda, you'll vote for Rhonda instead of, I'm not sure what Rhonda's opponent theme is.
I color my opponent.
Just so folks know, like none of this is like a personal thing. We're not like, I don't have any of us have a personal grudge against these folks, and
Right.
by all accounts, they're very nice people. But
They
not
are.
people can do things that are not in the interest of everyone else. So I just wanted to make sure that, this is not we're trying to do our best to not drag anyone through the mud. Even, though that's happening to us. Sorry. It's
By
just,
the nice people. By the nice people.
does anyone else have other questions that they would like to throw at us? I believe it's fill in the bubble. Let's double check.
Was that fill in the bubble on the picture there of
Yes.
Cynthia's, yeah. Well, thank you, Cynthia, for providing that picture. Thank you.
I guess we didn't get to see a picture of the envelope. Just keep an eye out. I assume Cynthia, do you want to unmute and just tell us what the envelope looked like? Could you describe it for us so that people know what to keep an eye out for?
Sure, yeah, it pretty much just looks like a ballot envelope. It says NNU on the outside of it, and it was very obvious when I got it in my mailbox. It's a larger size envelope than an average envelope, and as soon as I saw it, it definitely wasn't disguised as something other than a ballot.
Great. Was it a white envelope or did it have a color to it?
No color, it's white and with gray print.
All right. We'll make sure we communicate that with everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe while people think of other questions, I'm going to put in that we have the bylaws analysis that we've been looking at. When we're talking about the bylaws, we've been going through line by line, every bylaws changed since the 90s and looking at them and comparing them so that we can explain to people why things are changing or how they're changing. Maggie, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just want to be clear so that I can take the right information back to my unit. Because there was a lot of talk at our and during our last strikes and negotiations about getting rid of CNA. And so I just want to be clear so that I can give the right information to the people that I work with, that this is still CNA. It's just changing the leadership of CNA from within CNA, because there was a lot of concern about how that's not a good move, not possible. A lot of the things in our contract are contingent on remaining with CNA and those kind of concerns that I'm hearing on the unit in terms of there being any change that could be disruptive to the contract that we just got. So I just want to be clear, like, because I think with like the shift change logo, it looks different. It's like a different vibe. I just want to be clear that this is still CNA. But we're trying to change the leadership within CNA.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have our logo has its own vibe, because if our logo is too close to the official logo, they might come after us. They're not supposed to, but unions sometimes do that. And then other things, just so people know, because in our hospitals out here in Chicago, there's always discussion about going to another union. We have a local nurses association that that's still independent. And what I'm telling people is this is in many ways like better than going to another union, because we don't have to go through all the work of doing decertifications, those sorts of things, which are very, very dangerous and fraught process. And on top of that, like, my personal feeling is that at this point, the union would rather some of our facilities decertified than us take control of the union, because it will fundamentally restructure how things work in a really fundamental way, that they would rather just cut off the arm, so they don't have to deal with it. So I just want to point, everyone should understand, we're not trying to leave the union. We're not trying to decertify the union. We're not trying to change. All we're trying to do is, and we're not trying to go to a different union. We're fundamentally changing the union from the inside, so that it's the kind of union that everyone's excited to be involved with. So I just wanted to point that out, because I've had those discussions with many people. Eric, you got your hand up.
Yeah. So Maggie, one of the things is our union at Alta Bates, when they had the revolution that, I know Torald, you've heard Torald speak many times. When we had the revolution and we threw out the ANA in California, in the California Nurses Association, and became simply basically a nursing union, no nursing management, just bedside nurses union. We went from the 1990s to 2008. We had the best contract in the country. That was because we were in CNA, and that's because it was a nurse-led union. And then I'd say from that our 2011 through 2013 strikes, those 9 strikes, threatened 10th, we were riding the vapors of that progressive union. Those people that were progressive that led the union retired, and we were left with the people that had the philosophy of a top-down management run union, whether it was from nurses or boilermakers or sanitation workers, it didn't matter. They wanted to create a different type of union. I obviously, you know, we're at the same institution, and I can't emphasize enough that decertification, as I said during our campaign for a contract, was not the answer, because not having a union, of course, our employer is the embodiment of evil. You know, the fact that we had to fight not only management, which was the epitome of evil, but this evil driven staff-led union now was a really double whammy for us. So we are the vestiges. We're trying to resurrect the vestiges of that progressive union that got us the best contract in the country at Alta Bates Summit. And I think we need and we deserve to make every hospital we represent have the best contract they've ever had. And I think we can do that nationally. But I think we've all talked at Alta Bates. Our focus, as John has mentioned, the local comes first. We need to go from the local outward, not from out here in. The priority should be getting the best contract for Alta Bates Summit, the best contract for the University of Chicago, the best contract for Cook County. When you get the best contract for every hospital, your organizing takes care of itself, because people will say, I want what they have. And that's when people want to say, please, I want to join your union. And that's what will make us stronger. Right now, our union has went across the country raiding other unions. Nobody has been banging on the door at CNA and NOC saying, I want to join. They've been basically raiding other unions. We need to be a shining example for the rest of the country on how a union should be. We were at one point, and we've fallen off the bandwagon. Maggie, we are CNA. We are the true vestiges of CNA, NNU, and NOC. We are the true vestiges of it. What it was and what it can become again. That is this slate. The other slate is riding on the gas fumes of that progressive push that probably ended over a decade ago. And that's what you can tell. And I know Michael's been sharing it on Honey Badger, our website, but it's something we need to be involved in. We need to change this union. I think we're going to have a terrible life if we decertify. We'll have a terrible life if this current administration in our union continues. They were willing to allow us to decertify. They were allowing us, they were going to cut off the oldest contract in the California Nurses Association. That's at our hospital, the oldest contract that they have. They were willing to cut us off because we spoke up and said, we want something better. And by the way, for those of you not in California or familiar, our union, CNA, actually lobbied with management for management's last, best, and final. Our union lobbied with management against the nurse negotiators, against the will of the nurses. And thanks to Sarah Hughes, who published an article in Labor Notes the day we were taking an electronic vote, the first time we've ever taken an electronic vote, of which the nurse negotiators were told we were not allowed to oversee that vote. We would just have to trust them. Thanks to Sarah Hughes's article, they couldn't steal that vote and pass the last, best, and final by management. That's where we were. We were fighting our union. And then they came to us and said later, well, we thought in our professional opinion, accepting the last, best, and final was the best offer we could get. Of course, was it a great contract we got? No, but we did get a 32% raise. That was something we would never have gotten. I think we were down to like the 22% range prior to that. We wanted better staffing. We had so many more things that Michael Hill had written for us for proposals to empower nurses that the union pushed out of the way, that the union found not to be a priority for them. So yeah, we are the last vestiges of that progressive union, and we need to be resurrected. We need to be a progressive union again. Thanks.
Betty, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, just to add on to what Eric said, I'm in the, I work at Alta Bates Ashby. I'm chair of the PPC. I've been a nurse rep for decades. We sat at those meetings. They had 4 membership meetings, and Ann Stewart sat there and told us they needed to protect us because we were reaching out for something that was beyond what we could have or what we could get, because they already had decided 16 other hospitals were going to get what they got, and they didn't want us to have anything more. And I just told Ann, I said, whenever there's been a revolution, whether it was the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, any kind of movement, the women's movement, you always need to step out into the dark to find your way. You're not going to get it by just counting on everything coming to you. And we told her, we're willing to risk this. We don't need your protection. We're not going to buy this. And then they started telling us that there were many nurses that wanted this contract. I mean, we got sold down the line so bad that I am so happy to see this going on, and I hope you all win.
I just want to say I love hearing from people that are ready to take a step forward into something that is unknown, to try and get something better. And there's many times when Eric has said, John, if you knew how much money we were getting made, you'd get upset at us. And I said, you took the steps to get that. You fought for those things. I want those things too here in our facilities. I know California, you all are living in a world where, your inflation rates are higher than anywhere else, but we all get paid, our hospitals all get paid the same Medicare dollars, right? And so this idea that we can't fight for similar, maybe not as big, but still big enough for, I have coworkers complaining to me about the price of milk and eggs. Young, single nurses who are 10 years in at one of the best paid facilities in Chicago complaining to me about the price of milk and eggs. And then we get told that we can't talk about economics and we're going to be too greedy. And so I just want to say that it's inspiring to listen to people from all over the union. It's inspiring. Like, I've always thought that California nurses were leading the way for all of us. And I'm just happy that we're here together to make sure that our union can be as strong as I think we all know it should be, especially in this moment after COVID. I mean, we're still living with the effects of COVID. We'll be living with that probably for the rest of our lives, but the world has changed. We need a new union, a new type of union that's really going to fight in the way that I think we all feel like it needs. My last union contract, even though we took the first strike of nurses in Chicago in 50 years, we still ended up taking steps because they didn't want to let us take a second strike, even though our strike vote passed almost 90% and beat all of their expectations for what it should be. So I just want people to hear that I'm doing this because I feel like we deserve better. You all deserve better. And that doing something difficult is never, these are the things that are, nothing good is ever easy. But this is the kind of stuff, the work that needs to happen if we want our union to be the fighting union we all need it to be right now in 2023 and going forward. Well, that's a lot of things for me to say. It's 8:26. I like to keep us holding ourselves to 90 minutes. I don't want us to overextend our stay with all of you all. Every minute that a nurse decides to spend with us I feel is a blessing because you all have other things that you could be doing, anything else in the world besides hanging out and listening to us talk about our union. So I really appreciate everyone being here. Does anyone, we were talking about having a live stream of a ballot filling out. It is Tuesday, the 11th. Would people like to meet again at the same time, either Saturday or Sunday, to have like another, so that your coworkers who you think might want to be on these calls can get a chance to get involved or hear from us? Or is there another day that people think would be a better day? I'm also going to repost. I posted a couple of links in the chat. I'm going to repost it now. The link I just put in is the link to get more involved with Shift Change, to get more information. We can send you, we can send out links, that sort of thing. We can send documents, flyers, whatever you need. We also have a WhatsApp where people are organizing. And if you would like to be in that WhatsApp, either put your email or your phone number in the chat so we can reach out to you if you don't want to go through the trouble of filling out a form. Or we could just wrap it up. Are people wanting to wrap it up and just wait to see when our next meeting is? We'll call it.
Those of us at Out Debate Summit, Mike will post it at Honey Badger, and we'll have some of the nurses in labor and delivery and NICU posted in their Facebook pages. And I think, John, you'll put it in the WhatsApp, of course. Did you put up the information to join WhatsApp for people?
I can post that in right now. The other thing I would say is that, give me a moment. Let me get the WhatsApp in there so that people can join. We are getting into the actual election itself, and we're going to need help with volunteers for actually making phone calls. We have lists of people who've been asked to be reminded. And so if you are willing to even just like send some text messages or phone call coworkers, that would be the kind of thing that would be very helpful to all of us. Also, we're looking for more Kaiser and University of California nurses in particular. So if you know people who are University of California or other Kaiser nurses, I know we've gotten some Kaiser nurses now in these calls. We want to be in conversation with people from as many systems as possible, in particular the bigger California systems. We are doing really remarkably well, all things considered, but I think that we always want to be reaching out to expand the campaign, thinking of it as we're spreading around a prairie fire so that as many people as possible know that there's an election happening, and as many people as possible get a chance to vote and they know what's at stake. So I just put the WhatsApp chat if you want to join our organizing. And I'm happy staying in the chat for another 10 minutes just for people to filter out or ask questions if they don't want to ask them in front of everyone else. But also look forward, we're planning on having an article will probably be coming out in Labor Notes, which is the organization that put us all together in touch in the first place. Interview will be happening Thursday. Hopefully we'll get something out next week. Look forward to that and share it when you get it, when it comes out. And then we also have on our YouTube channel, or you can listen to it on their podcast called It Could Happen Here. And I will post the links to that. Those are just so people can get the story out to people if they want to kind of get the long, gory details of how this has all come together and what we'd all like to do.
And John, just mentioned that It Can Happen Here had a two-part interview with John, myself, and Raina. Mark was diligently making the video that you guys have seen and shared. And that's available if you go to Apple Podcast, or help me out, John, is there's also probably Google. It's available through Google and such. So it can happen here. Just look for that podcast, and we're interviewed 2 1-hour episodes. So it would be fruitful. We elaborated some things. So please share that and listen to it yourself.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put those, there we go. The title of it's the union election that could happen, or that could change everything. I don't know if that's like a little hyperbolic, but I do think that I do believe it.
I totally accept it. I totally accept it.
So there's the first part, and here, let me get the second one up. There we go. There's the second part. And that's just so you can share those with coworkers who just want to hear it. You know, I know we kind of talk about, you know, breaking things up into little sound bites. I've had coworkers come up to me and they sit and they get very interested when I explain to them all the drama involved around this election, because it's actually exciting. It's like making the union exciting to people. So.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like a little CW show for people over 50. I don't know.
Sorry. Rhonda, do you want to say anything? You're going to be on the road here in a day or so, or anything about your the shenanigans around your event, the events that you were part of today?
Oh, well, today was fabulous because we had a local in Ohio, Sherrod Brown, introduced federally mandated nurse to patient ratios and on the Senate side. And he's running for re-election this cycle. So he wanted Ohio as his backdrop. So our local action was kind of hijacked by national, but Sherrod Brown made it very clear that he wanted Ohio nurses surrounding him. And then the news clips are all pictures of the Ohio nurses. So it was very interesting, and we were very excited about that. And I've posted some stuff on my Facebook page with the clips. Also, what's coming up is on Friday, one of the regional workshops that's going to have all the Council of Presidents and the VA leadership at that workshop. I'm not sure what that's all about, other than they're getting free campaigning, but I will be at this one. So I will make sure that, I announce myself as a candidate as they announce themselves as a candidate at lunchtime. And I will make sure that they know that there's another slate of Council of Presidents running as well. And I have buttons and flyers to take with me for you guys.
One last thing is that if anyone in particular at your facility, if you want us to send you buttons, so we have these really nice 2-inch buttons that say shift change, vote shift change, and you want to be able to show those off with your coworkers, we're happy to mail them out to you. We just ask that people get pictures of them so we can share them off, show them off on our Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. Check out our website, shiftchangennu.org. Share that website with people. It's got we have a section with all of our flyers as PDFs. But if you are so inclined, get in touch with us. We're happy to send. We've been sending care packages to nurses in Georgia, to nurses in North Carolina, to nurses in California. Well, no, up by over to Rhonda and Dayton, and also to nurses at the VAs here in Chicago. So we are happy to send materials to anyone who wants them. We want to just make sure that the word gets out there and that people actually know that there's an election happening. It is now 8:36, and I'm going to put out a motion that we wrap up the call. Does anyone want to second that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Rhonda. All right, everybody, we're gonna wrap it up so that you all can get back to your evenings. I've got work tomorrow. Everyone else, I'm sure lots of people gotta get back to their jobs or their families or whatever. So anyway, everybody have a good night. And if you have any other questions or anything, just reach out to us through either our social media or our website, fill out that form, get onto the WhatsApp, and we will keep working on it. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa. My kiddos are gonna start coming in telling me to get out of their, this is my only room that I could do these Zoom calls in. So anyway, I'm gonna head out. Everyone else have a good night.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.